She thought I was useless, until I told her, "Let him know you'll be free next week. I'm filing for divorce." She froze, eyes wide, and whispered, "Wait, what?" "My name is Darren Halloway, and I'm a structural engineer. For 15 years, I've calculated load-bearing capacities, stress points, and when things are about to collapse. Turns out those skills translate well to marriages." It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. Mira stood at our kitchen counter, coffee mug in one hand, phone in the other. She was texting someone with the kind of smile she used to give me. The morning light caught her auburn hair, and for a moment I remembered why I'd fallen for her 17 years ago. "Another late meeting tonight," she said without looking up. "The Henderson project is really demanding." I nodded, buttering my toast. Mira worked in human resources at Consolidated Marketing Solutions, a mid-size firm downtown. She'd been having a lot of late meetings lately. The Henderson project seemed to require an unusual amount of after-hours attention. "Who's leading that project again?" I asked casually. "Liam Morrison, senior manager, really sharp guy." Her fingers danced across the screen. The smile widened. I finished my breakfast and headed to my home office. As a consulting engineer, I worked mostly from our converted spare bedroom, reviewing blueprints and conducting site inspections. It was steady work, not glamorous, but it paid well enough to support our comfortable lifestyle in this 3-bedroom row house. Around noon, I walked to the kitchen for lunch. Mira had left for work, but she'd forgotten her phone charger. Her phone sat on the counter, screen lit with a new message. I shouldn't have looked, but when you've been married 16 years, you develop instincts about when something's wrong. The message preview was from LM. "Can't wait for tonight. Tell the boring husband you'll be late again." My engineering mind kicked in immediately. This wasn't speculation anymore. This was data. Evidence. A structural failure had been identified. I didn't touch her phone. Instead, I went back to my office and opened a new folder on my computer. I labeled it Project Documentation and began a timeline. When had the late meeting started? How often did she mention Liam Morrison? What other small details had I missed? The answer was plenty. 3 months ago, Mira had suddenly become interested in yoga classes. 2 months ago, she'd started buying new lingerie. Last month, she'd suggested we needed space to grow as individuals. Classic signs, really. I'd just been too trusting to see the pattern. That evening, Mira came home at nearly 10 o'clock. Her hair was slightly messed, her lipstick gone, and she had that particular glow that comes from being thoroughly satisfied, just not by her husband. "Sorry, honey, the Henderson project ran really late. Liam had to go over everything twice." "I'm sure he did," I said. She looked at me sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just that thorough project management is important." She relaxed. "Exactly. Anyway, I'm exhausted. I'm going to shower and go to bed." While she showered, I did something I'd never done before. I looked through her purse. Her phone was password protected, but I found something even better. A receipt from Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant across town. Dinner for 2, including a bottle of wine that cost more than our usual weekly grocery budget. The timestamp was 7:30 p.m. Her late meeting had been a dinner date. I photographed the receipt and put everything back exactly where I'd found it. Then I sat in my office and stared at the timeline I'd started. The pattern was clear now. Every late meeting coincided with charges to restaurants, hotels, or other romantic venues. But I needed more than receipts. I needed leverage. The next morning, Mira was back at the kitchen counter with her phone. This time, I paid attention to her body language. The way she angled the screen away from me. The little laugh she gave at whatever she was reading. The quick glances to make sure I wasn't watching. "Another Henderson meeting today?" I asked. "Probably. Liam says we're at a critical phase." "He sounds very hands-on." "He is. Very thorough." She blushed slightly. After she left, I made a decision. I called my lawyer, Janet Cartwright. Janet was sharp, practical, and had handled my business contracts for years. She also specialized in family law. "Darren, what can I do for you?" "I need to discuss some options regarding my marriage." "I see. Can you come in this afternoon?" "Actually, I have a more immediate question. Do you remember that separation agreement Mira had me sign last year? The one for tax planning purposes?" There was a pause. "The one that essentially gave you sole ownership of all marital assets in exchange for assuming all debts?" "Yes, I remember advising against it." "But it's legally binding?" "Absolutely. She signed it, you signed it, it was notarized. Why do you ask?" "Just checking my options." Janet's voice became more serious. "Darren, if you're considering divorce, that agreement puts you in a very strong position. She essentially signed away her rights to everything except her personal belongings and retirement account. And if she's been having an affair? In this state, adultery doesn't affect asset division, but it could impact alimony. Combined with that agreement, let's just say she wouldn't have much leverage. I thanked Janet and hung up. Then I opened my laptop and began drafting a divorce petition. The state allowed for online filing in uncontested cases. Given the separation agreement, this would likely qualify. That evening, Mira announced another late meeting. This time, I was ready. "Before you go," I said, "I need you to do me a favor." She was checking her reflection in the hallway mirror, applying fresh lipstick. "What kind of favor?" "Text Liam and let him know you'll be free next week. I'm filing for divorce." The lipstick tube slipped from her fingers and clattered on the hardwood floor. She turned to face me, her face pale except for 2 bright spots of color on her cheeks. "Wait. What?" I opened my laptop, which I'd positioned on the coffee table. The divorce petition was already completed, just waiting for my electronic signature. "I said I'm filing for divorce. Tonight. I thought you should give Liam a heads up that you'll be available for more than just late meetings." "Darren, I don't know what you think you know, but..." "Romano's restaurant. Last Tuesday. Dinner for 2? Wine that costs more than my monthly car payment. The Marriott downtown, 3 weeks ago. The Paradise Inn, 2 weeks before that. Should I continue?" Her mouth opened and closed without sound. Finally, she found her voice. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been paying attention. There's a difference." I clicked the signature button and entered my password. "The petition is filed. Case number 2024 DR8847. You'll be served within 48 hours. "You can't just... We need to talk about this. We can work things out." "Actually, we can't. See, remember that separation agreement you had me sign last year? The one for tax planning? Turns out it's legally binding. You signed away your claim to pretty much everything except your clothes and your 401k. The color drained completely from her face. "That was just for taxes. Janet said it was just paperwork." "Janet advised against it, actually. I have the email chain. You insisted because you said it would save us money. Funny how these things work out." She sank onto the couch, her phone forgotten in her hand. "Darren, please. We've been married 16 years. This is just a rough patch. I made some mistakes, but..." "Some mistakes?" I closed the laptop and stood up. "Mira, you've been having an affair for months. You've lied to me every single day. You've spent our money on romantic dinners with another man. And this morning, I heard you on the phone with your sister, calling me replaceable." Her eyes widened. "You heard that?" "The baby monitor in the kitchen is still connected to the receiver in my office. You were standing right next to it." She buried her face in her hands. "Oh, God." "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack a bag and stay somewhere else tonight. Tomorrow you can start looking for a lawyer, though I suspect your options are limited given the separation agreement. And you might want to call Liam and explain why his HR department will be receiving some interesting documentation." "What documentation?" I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo of the Romano's receipt. Expense account fraud is a terminable offense at most companies, especially when it involves an affair with a subordinate. "Liam's not my subordinate. He's a senior manager. In marketing, you're in HR. Different departments, but you handle his performance reviews and salary recommendations. That makes it a conflict of interest at minimum." I'd done my research. Plus, I checked the company handbook online. Consensual relationships must be disclosed to avoid exactly this kind of situation. Mira stared at me like she'd never seen me before. "When did you become so calculating?" "I've always been calculating. I'm an engineer. I just never had reason to calculate the failure points of my marriage before." She stood up slowly, her phone buzzing with what I assumed was a text from Liam wondering where she was. "I need to think about this." "Think all you want. The papers are filed. You'll be served at work tomorrow, probably around lunchtime. I paid for expedited service." "At work? Darren, that's humiliating." "So is finding out your wife is cheating from a restaurant receipt." She picked up her phone and purse with shaking hands. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is. The case number is 2024 DR8847 if you want to look it up. Have a good evening, Mira. Tell Liam I said hello." She left without another word. I heard her car start in the driveway, then pull away into the night. I poured myself a drink and sat back down at my laptop. There was still work to do. The next morning started with a phone call from Holly, Mira's sister. Holly had always thought I wasn't good enough for Mira, and she'd never been shy about sharing that opinion. "Darren, what the hell is wrong with you? Mira called me crying last night." "Good morning, Holly. How are you?" "Don't give me that polite crap. She told me you filed for divorce. Over what exactly? Some receipts? Marriages go through rough patches. I put the phone on speaker and continued making my coffee. Holly, did Mira mention the separation agreement she signed last year? What about it? I'm going to email you a copy. It's public record now anyway. Take a look at sections 4 through 7. Then call me back if you still think this is about some receipts. I sent the email and hung up. The separation agreement was devastating in its clarity. Mira had signed away her rights to the house, both cars, my business assets, and our joint savings accounts. In exchange, I'd assumed responsibility for all debts, including her student loans and credit cards. At the time, she'd convinced me it was a smart tax strategy. Our accountant had been skeptical, but Mira had insisted. Now I understood why. She'd been planning her exit strategy for over a year. The agreement would have let her leave the marriage with minimal financial responsibility while I handled all the debts. She just hadn't counted on me discovering her affair before she was ready to pull the trigger. My phone rang again. This time it was Paul Martinez, my best friend since college. Paul was a project manager at a construction company and one of the few people who'd always seen through Mira's charm. Dude, Holly just called my wife. What's this about you filing for divorce? Mira's been having an affair. I filed last night. Damn, I'm sorry, man. You okay? Actually, yeah, I'm better than I've been in months. You want to grab lunch? We can talk. Can't today. I'm expecting some entertainment around noon. At 11:45 a.m., I drove to the office building where Mira worked. The late morning traffic moved predictably, commuters already settling back into their routines, unaware of the small, precise disruption about to occur. I parked across the street with a clear view of the main entrance. From there, I could see the revolving doors, the security desk just inside, the rhythm of employees coming and going with coffee cups and ID badges swinging from lanyards. At exactly 12:10 p.m., a process server in a brown uniform walked into the building carrying a manila envelope. He moved with the unhurried confidence of someone who knew his role and didn't need to rush it. My phone rang at 12:17 p.m. The timing was almost surgical. Darren, you bastard. How could you have me served at work? Hello, Mira. Did you get the papers? I kept my eyes on the building as I spoke, watching reflections ripple across the glass. Everyone saw. The receptionist announced it over the intercom. Mira Halloway, you have legal documents to sign. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? Her voice was tight, pitched high with a mix of rage and panic. I imagine it was about as humiliating as finding out your spouse is cheating through a restaurant receipt. I want to talk. Can we meet somewhere private? The edge in her voice dulled, desperation seeping in. We can talk through our lawyers. I assume you'll be hiring one. Darren, please. This doesn't have to be ugly. It's already ugly, Mira. You made it ugly when you decided to have an affair instead of talking to me about whatever problems you thought we had. I felt oddly calm saying it, as if the words had finally settled into their proper places. There was a long pause. I could picture her standing somewhere just out of sight, phone pressed to her ear, co-workers pretending not to stare. What do you want? I want you to sign the papers and make this as simple as possible. The separation agreement is clear. You get your personal belongings, your car, and your retirement account. I get everything else. That's not fair. I contributed to this marriage too. You're right. You contributed lies, deception, and adultery. The court will take that into consideration. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I have receipts, credit card statements, and hotel records going back 3 months. Plus, I recorded our conversation last night. You recorded me without my consent? That's illegal. Her voice spiked again, grasping for leverage. In this state, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. I consented. It's perfectly legal. Another long pause, heavier this time, stretched thin with calculation. I need time to think. Take all the time you want. You have 30 days to respond to the petition. After that, I can proceed with a default judgment. She hung up. The call ended abruptly, leaving only the quiet hum of my car's engine and the distant sound of traffic. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. The sun had shifted, casting longer shadows across the dashboard. Is this Darren Halloway? Yes. This is Liam Morrison. I think we need to talk. His tone was cautious, rehearsed. I smiled. Hello, Liam. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. Look, I know this situation is complicated, but Mira and we care about each other. This isn't just some casual thing. He sounded earnest, as if sincerity alone might absolve him. How romantic. Does your wife know about your caring relationship with Mira? Silence. It stretched just long enough to be an answer. Oh, that's right. You're married too, aren't you? Jennifer Morrison, according to the company directory. Works at the accounting firm downtown. I bet she'd be very interested to know about your caring relationship with an HR manager. What do you want? The confidence drained from his voice, replaced by alarm. I want you to stay away from my wife until this divorce is final. I want you to stop using company resources for your personal relationship, and I want you to understand that if you try to interfere with these proceedings in any way, Jennifer will receive a very detailed timeline of your affair. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm explaining consequences. There's a difference? I hung up and immediately called Janet Cartwright. Janet, I need you to file a motion for expedited proceedings. I want this divorce finalized as quickly as possible. On what grounds? Adultery, financial deception, and I suspect there's more I haven't discovered yet. I'll draft the motion this afternoon. Darren, you should know that Mira called my office this morning asking for a referral to another family law attorney. Did you give her one? I gave her 3 names. All good lawyers, but none of them will be able to do much given that separation agreement. That evening, I was reviewing some engineering plans when my doorbell rang. The blue glow of my monitor cast long shadows across the living room, lines and measurements blurring together as my attention drifted. I'd been tracing load paths and stress points, the familiar logic of it soothing in a way conversations hadn't been lately. The doorbell cut cleanly through my focus, sharp and insistent. I sighed, saved my work, and stood. Through the peephole, I saw Holly standing on my front porch with her arms crossed. Her posture was rigid, jaw set, the stance of someone who'd already decided how this conversation was supposed to go. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. The night air slipped in between us, cool and faintly damp. Holly, we need to talk. Her tone was clipped, defensive. About what? About you destroying my sister's life over a midlife crisis. She leaned forward slightly, as if expecting an argument. Is that what she told you this was? She said you've been paranoid and controlling, that you've been going through her things and making accusations. Her eyes searched my face, looking for confirmation of the version she'd been given. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photo of the Romano's receipt. Paranoid accusations? I held it steady between us, letting the timestamp and total speak for themselves. Holly glanced at the screen, and her confident expression wavered slightly. That could be anything. A business dinner. The words came slower now. At 7:30 p.m. on a Saturday? With wine that cost $200 a bottle? Maybe it was a special client. She sounded less sure, grasping for footing. I showed her another photo. Hotel receipt from the same night. Room service for 2, including champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries. Very thorough client service. I scrolled just enough for her to see the details clearly. Holly's face fell. Oh. The fight drained out of her shoulders all at once. Your sister has been lying to both of us, Holly. The difference is I have documentation. Even so, divorce seems extreme. Can't you work it out? She looked up again, softer now, almost pleading. She called me replaceable, Holly. Yesterday morning, on the phone with you, she said I was replaceable and that Liam was everything she'd always wanted in a man. Saying it out loud still felt strange, like reading someone else's story. Holly looked down at her shoes. She was upset. People say things when they're upset. People reveal their true feelings when they're upset. The separation agreement she had me sign proves she's been planning this for over a year. I just happened to discover her timeline before she was ready to implement it. What are you going to do? Her voice was quiet now. I'm going to finalize this divorce as quickly as possible and move on with my life. What Mira does is no longer my concern. The certainty in that surprised even me. Holly nodded slowly. She's staying with me for now. That's fine. She can pick up her belongings this weekend. I'll be out of the house from 10 to 4 on Saturday. Practical boundaries felt easier than emotions. Darren, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Neither did I, until recently. Good night, Holly. I stepped back, signaling the end. After she left, I poured another drink and sat in my quiet house. The walls felt different without the constant tension, the silence no longer heavy but open. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The uncertainty was over. The lies were exposed. The structure had collapsed, but now I could build something new. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You'll regret this. I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Janet with a note, adding harassment to the file. Then I blocked the number and went to bed. Friday morning brought another surprise. I was reviewing structural calculations for a new office building when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Consolidated Marketing Solutions. Darren Halloway. Mr. Halloway, this is Rebecca Chen from Human Resources at Consolidated Marketing. I need to ask you some questions about your wife's employment here. Ex-wife, as of this week. What kind of questions? We've received some concerning information about potential policy violations. Can you come in this afternoon? What kind of policy violations? I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Would 2 o'clock work? I agreed and spent the next few hours wondering what Mira had done now. At 2 o'clock sharp, I walked into the sleek downtown offices of Consolidated Marketing Solutions. Rebecca Chen was a serious woman in her 40s, with the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that suggested she'd dealt with plenty of workplace drama. She led me to a conference room where another woman was waiting. This is Sarah Williams, our compliance officer. Please have a seat. I sat across from them, noting the manila folder on the table between us. Mr. Halloway, Rebecca began, we understand you filed for divorce from Mira Halloway, who works in our HR department. That's correct, Sarah leaned forward. We've received information suggesting that Mrs. Halloway has been involved in an inappropriate relationship with Liam Morrison, one of our senior managers. I wouldn't know anything about that. Rebecca opened the folder. Mr. Halloway, we have reason to believe you might have documentation that could help us understand the scope of this relationship. I studied their faces. What kind of documentation? Expense reports, receipts, anything that might show misuse of company resources. I pulled out my phone. I do have some receipts that might interest you, but I should mention that I'm not trying to get anyone in trouble. I'm just trying to protect myself in divorce proceedings. We understand. Anything you can share would be helpful. I showed them the photos of receipts I'd collected. Romano's restaurant, the Marriott Hotel, several other upscale establishments, all charged to what appeared to be company credit cards. Sarah's expression grew darker with each image. These are all from Liam's corporate account. Is that a problem? It's a very big problem. Company policy strictly prohibits using corporate accounts for personal entertainment. And if this involved a relationship with an HR employee who has input on his performance reviews? Rebecca nodded grimly. That's a conflict of interest that should have been disclosed immediately. What happens now? We'll need to conduct a full investigation. Both employees will be suspended pending the outcome. I tried to look concerned rather than satisfied. I hope this doesn't cause problems for Mira. She's going through enough right now. Mr. Halloway, I have to ask, do you have any other documentation that might be relevant? I hesitated, then decided to play my strongest card. There might be something else. Yesterday, I received a threatening text message from an unknown number. Given the timing, I suspect it might be related to this situation. I showed them the screenshot of the "This isn't over" message. Sarah and Rebecca exchanged glances. Mr. Halloway, Sarah said carefully, would you be willing to provide copies of all this documentation for our investigation? Of course. I want this resolved as much as you do. An hour later, I walked out of the building with a sense of satisfaction. Mira and Liam had created their own problems. I'd simply provided the documentation. That evening, Paul came over with pizza and beer. So, how are you holding up? Better than expected. It's amazing how much energy you have when you're not constantly wondering what's wrong with your marriage. Any word from Mira? She's been calling and texting all day. I haven't answered. What's she saying? I showed him some of the messages. They ranged from angry, "You're destroying my career," to pleading, "We can work this out," to threatening, "You'll pay for this." Paul whistled. She's really losing it. The best part is, I'm not doing anything except telling the truth. She created this situation. I'm just not covering for her anymore. What's next? I wait. The divorce should be finalized within 60 days. The separation agreement makes it pretty straightforward. And then? Then I figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life. The words lingered in the quiet apartment, heavier than I'd intended, settling into the spaces between us. There was the faint smell of grease and cardboard from the pizza boxes on the counter, the low murmur of the television bleeding in from the living room. I hadn't realized how tired I was until the thought of choice, real, unpressured choice, surfaced. It felt unfamiliar, almost indulgent. I leaned back against the wall, exhaling, when the sharp chime of the doorbell cut through the moment. We were interrupted by the doorbell. The sound echoed once, then again, more insistent. I moved to the door on reflex, already bracing myself. Through the peephole, I saw Mira standing on the porch. She looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, strands clinging to her face, her makeup smeared as if she'd wiped at her eyes too many times, and she was wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in yesterday, rumpled and dulled by wear. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. The metal rattled softly, a physical reminder of the boundary between us. "What do you want, Mira?" "I need to talk to you, please." Her voice cracked on the last word, raw and hoarse. "We have nothing to discuss." "They suspended me, Darren. They suspended me from my job because of those receipts you showed them." Her hands twisted together just below the chain, knuckles whitening. "I didn't show them anything. They asked me questions, and I answered honestly." I kept my voice even, though my jaw tightened. "You know what this means? I can't afford a lawyer now. I can't afford anything." Panic bled through the edges of her words. Paul appeared behind me, close enough that I could feel his presence at my shoulder. "Hey, Mira." She glared at him. "This is private, Paul." "Actually, it's not," I said. "Anything you want to say to me can be said in front of witnesses." I met her eyes, refusing to look away. "Fine, I want to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "I'll sign the divorce papers without fighting them, quick and clean. In exchange, you don't provide any more information to my company." She spoke faster now, as if afraid I'd cut her off. "Mira, I haven't provided any information to your company. They asked me questions, and I answered them. That's not the same thing." "You're splitting hairs." "I'm being precise. There's a difference." She pressed her face closer to the gap in the door, breath fogging faintly against the wood. "Darren, please. I made mistakes, but I don't deserve to lose everything." "You're not losing everything. You're losing the things you signed away in the separation agreement. The agreement you insisted on, the agreement you planned to use to leave me holding all the debts while you started fresh with Liam." Each sentence landed carefully, deliberately. Her face went pale. How did I figure out your plan?" "I'm an engineer, Mira. I'm good at analyzing structures and identifying failure points. Your plan had a lot of failure points." "What do you want from me?" Her voice was smaller now. "I want you to sign the papers and move on. That's all I've ever wanted." "And if I don't?" "Then we go to court, and everything becomes public record. Every receipt, every hotel stay, every lie you told. Is that really what you want?" She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes searching my face for hesitation that wasn't there. Then she turned and walked away, her steps unsteady as she disappeared down the path. Paul closed the door behind her, the chain sliding free at last. "Think she'll sign?" "She doesn't have much choice. Her lawyer will explain the math to her." "What math?" "The separation agreement gives her almost nothing to fight for. Fighting it would cost more in legal fees than she could possibly gain. And now that she's suspended from work, she can't afford to fight." "Exactly." My phone buzzed with a text from Janet Cartwright. "Opposing counsel contacted me. They want to discuss settlement terms. Can you come in Monday morning?" I showed the text to Paul, letting the screen glow between us. "Sounds like she's ready to deal." "Sounds like her lawyer explained the math." We finished our pizza and watched a game on TV. The commentators' voices washed over me, meaningless and comforting. For the first time in months, I felt relaxed. The crisis was almost over. Soon, I could start rebuilding. But first, I had one more card to play. Monday morning, I sat in Janet Cartwright's office reviewing the settlement proposal. Mira's lawyer had drafted a document that essentially accepted the terms of the separation agreement with minor modifications. "She wants to keep her car and personal belongings, plus her retirement account," Janet explained. "In exchange, she'll sign a waiver giving up any claim to alimony or future assets." "What about the debts?" "You assume all marital debts, as specified in the original agreement." I reviewed the numbers. Even with the debt assumption, I was coming out far ahead. The house alone was worth more than all our combined debts. "There's one more thing," Janet said. "She's requesting that you sign a non-disclosure agreement about the circumstances of the divorce." "Absolutely not." "I told her lawyer you'd probably say that. She's concerned about her professional reputation." "She should have thought about that before having an affair with a coworker." "I agree, but her lawyer had to ask." I signed the settlement agreement and left Janet's office feeling lighter than I had in years. The divorce would be final within 30 days. That afternoon, I got an unexpected phone call from Jennifer Morrison. "Mr. Halloway, this is Jennifer Morrison. I think we should talk." "Mrs. Morrison, I was wondering if I'd hear from you. I found out about my husband and your wife last week. I've been trying to decide what to do." "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Actually, I'm grateful. I've suspected something was wrong for months, but I didn't have proof. What can I do for you?" "I was hoping we could meet. I think we might be able to help each other." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown. Jennifer Morrison was an attractive woman in her late 30s with short blonde hair and intelligent green eyes. She looked tired but determined. "Thank you for meeting with me," she said as we sat down with our coffee. "Of course. How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected. Finding out the truth is almost a relief after months of wondering what was wrong." "I know the feeling. Liam told me you threatened to expose their affair to me. I told him there would be consequences if he interfered with my divorce proceedings. I wasn't threatening him. I was explaining reality." She smiled grimly. "I appreciate the distinction. Anyway, he's been suspended from his job pending an investigation." "I heard about that. The thing is, I don't think the company knows the full scope of what he's been doing." "What do you mean?" Jennifer pulled out a folder. "I've been going through our financial records, credit card statements, bank accounts, expense reports. Liam has been very careless with documentation." She showed me printouts of credit card statements highlighting charges to restaurants, hotels, and other businesses. The pattern went back over 6 months. "This is more extensive than I realized," I said. "It gets worse. Look at these dates." She pointed to several hotel charges that corresponded to company conference dates. "He was claiming to be at business conferences while actually having romantic getaways with your wife." "That's expense fraud." "Exactly. And look at this." She showed me another set of statements. "He's been using the company credit card for personal purchases, jewelry, flowers, even lingerie from an upscale boutique." I studied the documents. "Jennifer, this could result in criminal charges." "I know. The question is, what do I do with this information?" "What do you want to do?" "I want him to face consequences for what he's done, not just to our marriage, but for stealing from his company." "Have you talked to a lawyer?" "I have an appointment tomorrow, but I wanted to ask you something first." "What?" Would you be willing to provide a statement about what you discovered for the company investigation?" I considered this. "What kind of statement?" "Just the facts, the timeline, the receipts you found, the pattern of deception." "I can do that." "There's something else. I think Mira might have been helping him hide some of these expenses." "How?" "She works in HR. She would have access to expense reporting systems, employee files, policy information. If she was feeding him information about how to avoid detection, that would make her an accessory to fraud." "Exactly." I thought about this development. Mira hadn't just been having an affair. She'd potentially been helping Liam steal from their company. "Jennifer, you should definitely share this information with the investigators, and with your lawyer." "I will. I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable with me mentioning your name." "I'm fine with it. I've been honest about everything from the beginning." We talked for another hour, sharing details about the timeline of the affair and comparing notes about suspicious behavior from our respective spouses. By the time we parted ways, I had a much clearer picture of what Mira and Liam had been doing. That evening, I called Janet Cartwright. "Janet, I need to ask you something. If new information comes to light that suggests Mira committed fraud, does that affect our divorce settlement?" "What kind of fraud?" I explained what Jennifer had discovered about the expense reports and potential misuse of company resources. "If she's charged with a crime, it could affect the proceedings," Janet said. "But given that you're already getting a favorable settlement, it might not matter much practically." "I'm not looking to change the settlement. I just want to make sure I'm protected if this gets more complicated." "You should be fine. The separation agreement protects you from any debts or legal issues she might have incurred independently." "Good, because I think this is about to get much more complicated." I was right. The next morning, I woke up to find 2 police cars parked outside Mira's sister's house across town. By noon, the local news was reporting that 2 employees of Consolidated Marketing Solutions had been arrested for embezzlement and expense fraud. Mira's name wasn't mentioned in the initial reports, but Liam Morrison was identified as a senior manager who had allegedly stolen over $50,000 in company funds over a 6-month period. My phone started ringing immediately. Reporters, friends, family members who had heard the news. I didn't answer any of the calls. Instead, I sat in my quiet house and calculated the final load-bearing requirements for my new life. The structure was sound. The foundation was solid. Everything else was just details. The divorce papers were signed. The settlement was fair. The truth was finally out. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be. 2 weeks later, I was reviewing blueprints for a new hospital wing when Janet Cartwright called with news. The plans were spread across my desk in precise layers, translucent sheets aligned just enough to suggest order without quite achieving it. I had been tracing a load-bearing column with my finger, thinking about redundancy and safety margins, when my phone vibrated softly beside the ruler. I answered without looking at the screen. "The divorce is final. Judge signed the decree this morning." "That's it?" I asked, surprised by how flat my voice sounded. That's it. You're officially a free man. I waited for something to rise up, some rush of relief or ache of loss, but nothing came. I should have felt something dramatic. Relief, sadness, anger, something. Instead, I just felt complete, like a long, complicated project had finally been finished correctly, the kind where every calculation balanced and no hidden stress fractures remained. What about the criminal charges? Mira pled guilty to accessory charges yesterday. She'll get probation and community service, but no jail time. Liam wasn't so lucky. He's looking at 18 months minimum. And the company? They're pursuing civil remedies to recover the stolen funds. That's not your problem anymore. After hanging up, I set the phone down carefully and stood. I walked through my house. Our house. My house now. The rooms felt unfamiliar in a quiet way, like a place you'd lived in for years, but were seeing clearly for the first time. Light moved freely through the windows. The oppressive atmosphere that had been building for months was gone, leaving behind a neutral stillness that felt earned rather than empty. I was making lunch when the doorbell rang. The sizzle of the pan continued as I wiped my hands and crossed the kitchen. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize. She was well-dressed, professional-looking, holding a manila envelope pressed against her side like a credential. "Mr. Halloway, I'm Amanda Foster from Channel 7 News. I was hoping to ask you a few questions about the consolidated marketing embezzlement case." "I don't have any comment." "Sir, your ex-wife was involved in a significant fraud case. Don't you think the public has a right to know how these things happen?" "The public can read the court records. Everything's documented there. But you're the one who discovered the affair that led to uncovering the fraud. You're a hero in this story." I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged, the metal catching softly. "Miss Foster, I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who paid attention to his credit card statements and asked the right questions at the right time. But your actions led to the recovery of $50,000 in stolen funds." "My actions led to me filing for divorce. Everything else was a consequence of other people's choices." "Can you tell us how you felt when you discovered your wife was having an affair?" I considered the question, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator behind me. I felt like an engineer who had finally identified why a structure was failing. Once you understand the problem, the solution becomes obvious. "What's next for you?" "I'm going to finish my lunch, review some blueprints, and get on with my life." I closed the door and went back to making my sandwich. Through the window, I watched the news van drive away, its logo briefly catching the sun before disappearing down the street. That evening, Paul came over with takeout Chinese food. The smell of soy sauce and ginger filled the kitchen as we set cartons on the counter. "Saw you on the news," he said. "They use that?" "Just the part about being an engineer who identified a structural failure. It was actually pretty good." "I'm hoping this is the end of the media attention." "Probably will be. The story's played out now." We ate in comfortable silence for a while, the television off, the room settling into an easy rhythm. Finally, Paul asked, "Any regrets?" "About what?" "The whole thing. 16 years of marriage, gone." I thought about it. I regret that I didn't pay attention sooner. I regret that I trusted someone who was actively planning to betray me, but I don't regret discovering the truth, and I don't regret acting on it. "What about Mira? You think she regrets it?" "I think she regrets getting caught. I don't think she regrets the affair." "Cold." "Accurate." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Can we talk?" "M." I showed it to Paul. "You going to respond?" "Nope." I blocked the number and deleted the message. "She'll probably try again," Paul said. "Probably. But I don't have anything to say to her." "Not even I told you so?" "The court records say that for me." Over the next few weeks, I settled into a new routine. Work in the morning, gym in the afternoon, reading in the evening. I started cooking again, something I'd enjoyed before Mira decided she preferred restaurant meals. I cleaned out the spare bedroom and turned it into a proper home office. Most importantly, I started sleeping well again. No more lying awake wondering what was wrong. No more analyzing every conversation for hidden meanings. No more trying to solve problems I didn't fully understand. 1 month after the divorce was finalized, I got a letter from Jennifer Morrison. She and Liam were also divorced now, and she was moving to another city to start fresh. She thanked me for being honest about what I'd discovered and for helping her understand the scope of her husband's deception. "I've learned that the truth is always better than uncertainty," she wrote, "even when it's painful." I agreed with that assessment. 3 months later, I was having dinner at a new restaurant downtown when I saw Holly across the room. She was with a group of friends, and she looked happier than I'd seen her in years. When she noticed me, she came over to my table. "Darren, how are you?" "I'm well. You?" "Good. Really good, actually." She hesitated. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For not believing you about Mira, for thinking you were being paranoid or vindictive. You were protecting your sister, I understand that. I was protecting the version of my sister I wanted to believe existed. The real version? Well, you knew her better than I did." "How is she?" "She's working at a temp agency now, living in a studio apartment across town. She's struggling." I nodded but didn't comment. "She asks about you sometimes." "Holly, I hope she figures out her life and finds happiness. But that's not my concern anymore." "I know. I just thought you should know she realizes what she lost." "She didn't lose anything, Holly. She gave it away. There's a difference." Holly smiled sadly. "You always were precise about language. It's an engineering thing." After she returned to her table, I finished my dinner and walked home through the quiet streets of my neighborhood. The evening was clear and cool, and I could see stars between the streetlights. Back home, I sat in my office and pulled out a fresh notebook. I'd been thinking about writing down the whole experience, not for publication or revenge, but for my own understanding. Engineers like to document their projects, especially the ones that teach important lessons about structural integrity. I wrote, "The failure of a marriage, like the failure of any structure, rarely happens suddenly. There are warning signs, stress indicators, small compromises in the foundation that accumulate over time. The key is learning to recognize these signs and having the courage to act on what you discover." I paused, thinking about what had changed in my life over the past year. "I thought I was useless," I continued. "My wife told me I was replaceable. Her actions suggested I was just an obstacle to the life she really wanted. But it turned out that paying attention, asking questions, and insisting on honesty were exactly the skills the situation required. I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who refused to ignore structural problems when they became obvious. Sometimes that's enough." I closed the notebook and went to bed. Outside, the city hummed with its usual nighttime energy. Inside, my house was quiet and solid and mine. Tomorrow would bring new projects, new challenges, new opportunities to build something worthwhile. But tonight, I was exactly where I belonged. In a structure I understood, on a foundation I could trust, with a clear view of what came next. The marriage was over. The divorce was final. The truth was documented. The rest was just engineering.